I've used alcohol for all of the wrong reasons.
As two kids growing up from a small town in Wisconsin, alcohol was so normalized for us. I can't think of one family gathering or event that we had that didn't involve alcohol. It was just what we did. At Christmas, we had brandy old fashions. At any other event, we also had brandy old fashions. It was just something that our family did. You get together, you bring drinks, you have a lot of community and just family time. And so that was super normal, and I didn't really know anything different. I got involved working in a bar when I was 17 years old and have learned so much about myself through that process. But mostly what I've learned is that I don't have a problem with alcohol. For many years, I thought I did. And it's something that I've really struggled with because there's a lot of alcoholism in my family. There's a lot in Corey's family. And it's just something that I've tried to really keep in the front of my mind because I don't want to feel like it gets to have control over me. When I started working at a bar on Broadway in Nashville, Tennessee, my life shifted a lot because for the first time I was working behind a bar, enjoying that experience. I had a lot of friends, we had a lot of fun, we made a lot of money, we took a lot of shots, and we really made it an experience that was, work, but also enjoyment. And I really had a lot of fun with that. We lived like rock stars for most of our time in Nashville. And it's something that I am grateful for and I won't take away from. It forced me to look at my relationship with alcohol while also recognizing that I was in an environment allowing people to also consume it in a way that I didn't find healthy for myself, which also started contrasting me working behind a bar, making that normal for other people. My relationship with alcohol was draining me. I was waking up on Saturday mornings feeling zero energy, feeling zero excitement for my life, with dread of having to go back to the work at the bar that night. At the same time, I started using cannabis more regularly, and the contrast between alcohol and cannabis was astounding to me. And honestly, it is still mind-boggling because I grew up in such a time of normalization around alcohol that I couldn't understand why cannabis was looked at so negatively. Because for me, alcohol was giving me this downer experience. It was making me feel depressed and anxious. And at the same time, I was using cannabis and feeling inspired and having a very intense spiritual practice at the same time. So that has been sort of the journey of my life, is finding balance between these two pieces that don't really feel balanced. And the more that I was hiding my cannabis use, the more that I continued drinking, I just let myself get into a really, really dark hole. And it affected my life in every way. It affected our marriage. It affected my experiences. I didn't want to be around certain people. I didn't want to engage in certain behaviors. And it allowed me to really take a step back and look at myself and look at my priorities. What was important? What did I care about? And what did I want to do with my life? I knew that the bar scene wasn't going to be forever. But there was one day I had someone look at me and say, if you work on Broadway, you are a professional bartender. And a professional bartender plans on doing this for the rest of their life. And in that moment, I had a huge shift. I was not a professional bartender. In fact, I was a lot more than that. And there's nothing wrong with being a bartender. But for me, I was allowing that experience and that fun and that enjoyment and that alcohol environment to really pretend like I was living the life that I really dreamed of.
Now that we know your relationship with alcohol and cannabis, do you mind helping everyone else out and explaining that step one? And what was that? What was it that you noticed in those moments?
What was it for me was avoidance. I was avoiding feeling.
So where did that avoidance come from?
The avoidance for me came from a desire to numb. I didn't want to feel because feeling is hard and it hurts and it can be painful. But the problem was that I was just putting off the inevitable. And life has a funny way of piling and stacking until we're willing to face it. And for me, facing that head on was really the last year of our life. The van build was incredibly stressful. We were just not in a good place. And I had a really hard time understanding where my role was because I wasn't building the van. And I was kind of there for emotional support. And I was also kind of there to just like make everybody else feel better. And we just drank a lot. We drank with my parents when we were working on the van, and then we'd go to his parents' house and we would have drinks there because we hadn't seen them for a few days. And it was just this year-long cycle of making decisions and drinking all the time, even when I didn't feel like I wanted to. I was avoiding having to have harder conversations by allowing alcohol to kind of run the show for the last year.
So touching back on 3B, when did you realize that this avoidance was yours?
Honestly, I'm still sitting in that. I think there's a lot to be said about the way we were all raised, especially in our experience. Alcohol was so normalized, but we also live in a culture that normalizes it in general. Look at how the seltzer fad just went off. You know, like there is this idea of having more and more and more, and we wanted to try and we wanted to taste and we wanted to experience these new products. And so for me, I've had to look at my own relationship with alcohol and my own relationship to substances in general, but also having to give myself some grace in knowing that this was normal for a lot of people. And I worked in a bar that made this normal. I saw people from all over this country and truly all over the world who were experiencing and having fun and enjoying it. So it wasn't that it was a bad thing. It was just that my experience with it I was using it for all of the wrong reasons. I was drinking to cope and drinking to hide and drinking to ignore instead of drinking for enjoyment and drinking for fun and for pleasure.
So now that you've been able to notice there was an issue, you've been able to really address clearly what that was, as well as take ownership of it, what was your fourth and final step? What was your application and your course correction to try to make things a little bit better?
Well, currently, about 7 weeks ago, I decided I was going to give up all substances just to see how it felt. I don't imagine that I'll give up alcohol for the rest of my life, but I really wanted to make sure that I understood the relationship that I had with it. And same goes for cannabis. I gave up everything at the same time. And after 2.5 weeks, we went to an event, and it was the first event I decided to stay sober from alcohol. And it was incredibly challenging, but I'm proud of myself because I didn't do it. I didn't feel like I needed to do that. I enjoyed cannabis during that time, but I also allowed myself to see the way that these two substances allowed me to experience social settings in a very different way. So my course correction was that I'm currently living in a state that allows cannabis to be legal, and I always said that if I had to choose one or the other, I would choose cannabis. So I'm really trying to stick to that, and I'm going to allow myself to have alcohol if and when I want, but it's not going to be the first thing that I run to. And so that has been the first thing for me, is looking at that relationship, allowing myself to take a break from both, to take a break from anything, to look at what I was avoiding. So when I did that, I was able to see that I was truly avoiding my own pain. And now that I know that, I can also choose to look at my pain and choose to face it head on. My challenge to you would be to look at your own relationship to substances in your life, whether this is alcohol or cannabis or food or being around other people. Look at that. Ask yourself, what is my relationship with this? And do I enjoy it? Am I doing this because I want to do it, or I'm doing it because this is the social norm and this is what everyone else is doing?
Hey y'all, thanks for watching, and as always, like, comment, share, and we drop new material every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
If you're interested in our current projects or any of our future projects, please support our work at www.patreon.com/usversathat.